So look, Kavi, I'm going to start with you. The question I guess that everyone's asking is how will Tottenham and the leadership team deal with this?
Well, look, Antonio Conte is back in Italy at the moment, and I think it is touch and go whether he keeps his job as the Tottenham head coach. He's tried to build some bridges by making it clear that he didn't mean to attack the board, but obviously there is now 2 weeks until Spurs play again, and it's up to the chairman, Daniel Levy, to decide whether he wants to take any action against Antonio Conte. As far as the players are concerned, they expect that it's a matter of time before Conte leaves the club. They're upset about the fact that he has questioned their commitment to the club, and some of the things he said on Saturday really did appear to cross the line as far as his relationship with the players were concerned. Now, my sense was this morning that Antonio Conte actually wanted to continue as Tottenham manager, but I am not so sure now this lunchtime. My understanding of the situation is that he didn't speak out because he wanted to be sacked. He spoke out because this is something that he's been keeping inside himself for a very long time. This is what he feels is the situation at Spurs. And I'm being told that there is a growing sense that it would now be difficult for him to continue as the Spurs manager. I thought he might be trying to build some bridges with the Spurs players, for instance, but my understanding of the situation is no, he's disappointed in their attitude. He feels that wherever he's worked, he's been able to build a winning mentality very, very quickly, and he's very disappointed that he hasn't been able to do that at Spurs. And I think his feeling is that there are players at the club who are happy in the comfort zone, players who settle for mediocrity no matter who is the coach. And you just have to compare what's happened at Spurs to what's happened at Arsenal, because at the end of last season, Spurs beat Arsenal, finished above them in the league, and Arsenal players have improved, they've developed, they've signed players with the winning mentality, whereas the feeling at Spurs is that Spurs have gone backwards. There's been no improvement in the attitude or the mentality of the players. And also, when it comes to new players, too many of the new players they've signed have brought problems and complaints. And I'm being told that no matter who is the coach at Spurs, the players' attitude has been an issue there for a long time.
It's fascinating, isn't it? And it's interesting you mention Arsenal, because the way that Arteta was dealing with things 12 months ago when his head perhaps was on the block, was very much, this is me to blame, I'll sort this out. So it's an interesting way that both of them, the managers, have dealt with this situation very differently. Melissa, give us a sense of what's happened behind the scenes since that remarkable outburst.
Yeah, the rant actually started with an apology when Conte entered the press conference room because he had been late and he was trying to compose himself. So we can only imagine what would have happened, yes, if he was on time for the press conference. By that point, he hadn't actually spoken to the players yet. So the first time that the squad had a chance to actually absorb what he said and what he had accused them of being selfish was, by virtue of their phones and watching the little clips back. So the press, the media, we had all seen it largely before the players had a chance to see it. And the club watching it were thinking, uh-oh, what is this? Because it didn't only seem like he was pointing the fingers at the squad, but the hierarchy as well. Now, very quickly afterwards, Conte had made it clear to the board and to Daniel Levy particularly that none of the criticism was aimed at the club, that it was all against the players and their attitude. And when you actually look at the full transcript, you can see that that is the case. He's saying, why was it always the club taking the blame when Spurs are not successful? Why is it always the managers? Why do the players get alibis and excuses? Why did they not stand up and take responsibility as well? So I think him clarifying that position with the club is instructive because he says his anger is purely with the players. but also he has a history of, legal disputes. There was a long-running one with Chelsea. He doesn't want to get into a similar situation where he's accused of bringing Tottenham into disrepute. Now, what happens next? The board have been having several discussions, as you can imagine, which includes Conte as well. We know this because he's told them that he didn't mean anything towards the club or the way the club is run or the recruitment policies or anything like that. Now, these conversations will be ongoing as Daniel Levy tries to ascertain whether Tottenham have a better chance of reaching or securing top 4 with Conte in charge or without him there. How are the players going to respond to him? We'll have to wait to find out because there's been a 2-day pre-scheduled break.
Yeah.
So those that are not on international duty will be returning to the training ground tomorrow. It gives the club a first chance to assess what the dressing room reaction is going to be like. But from my understanding, there is huge unhappiness, and that was the case prior to the rant. We know that several players, as we reported on Sky Sports News, and staff have been in touch with Mauricio Pochettino, asking him to return because they feel there's no direction or there's nothing to buy into at Spurs under Conte.
We'll talk about Mauricio Pochettino in just a minute. It's interesting, isn't it? It's fascinating because literally we were hearing from a man in Antonio Conte telling us that he would die for this club until the end of the season, until that contract ran out. Now we're in a situation where we're questioning actually whether he'll be in the dugout for their next game. What do you think?
I mean, you're asking me whether he's going to lose his job over the next few days. I mean, I honestly, I can't give you a straight answer to that. I don't know the answer to that question. But all I can tell you is that this morning I felt that he wanted to continue until the end of the season. Whereas this lunchtime, I'm being told that, there is a growing sense that it would be difficult for him to continue. Now, that doesn't mean that he is going to be sacked or he's going to walk away. I think it's just we're in the middle of a situation where we're waiting for decisions to be made, decisions by Daniel Levy, decisions maybe by Antonio Conte as well. But I can't tell you one way or the other whether he is going to be sacked or not. What I can tell you is that I thought this morning that he wasn't going to be. A few hours later, I'm thinking that maybe he won't be the Spurs manager in 2 weeks' time. That is just the sense I'm getting, but I'm not saying that is something that's definitely going to happen.
Well, that's it. We're all kind
of... It could be different in an hour's time.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I'm saying from a week ago, it was very different for Antonio Conte. Surely there was almost like a straw that broke the camel's back feeling from him in terms of what we witnessed a week ago and what we witnessed this time around. I guess the fact that he hasn't signed his long-term future to the club as well hasn't helped matters, and the fact that there's still this situation where we've gone kind of Daniel Levy was supposedly making up a shortlist, Mauricio Pochettino's name keeps being mentioned. Where are we with him? How does he fit into all this?
I think the first thing to say is actually since January there's been a very strong feeling that Antonio Conte would not be the Spurs manager after the end of the season. That was quite clear at the club, amongst the dressing room, amongst the hierarchy. And so what Tottenham were trying to do is be quite sensitive to the manager's personal situation. He had very tough few months in terms of losing 3 close friends and also undergoing surgery and having a longer recuperation than he thought. So they wanted to be sensitive, be patient with him, allow him time to decide his future. But Conte was making it clear that he would like to return to Italy. He's homesick. He's thinking more about life now, given the loss of his friends. Now, that's one compartment. So Spurs haven't really, in their succession planning, been quite aggressive in that regard because they want to be respectful and sensitive. However, there's also a sense from the players that this is a man that doesn't want to be there. And it's been like that for a few months now. There's nothing to buy into, as I mentioned, in terms of an approach. Spurs don't play progressive football, and yet they've conceded the most of the top 12. And so by the manager absolving himself and the club from blame and laying it solely on the players, there's a disconnect there. You ask how Tottenham are going to handle it moving forward in terms of his successor, whether that comes immediately in this international break or at the end of the season. Now, Mauricio Pochettino is obviously the popular choice in terms of the players, in terms of the staff at the club, in terms of the fan base. He will be an instant unifier, and he would give people something to believe in again, because he led Spurs to a Champions League final when they were going through that stadium upheaval, when they made zero investment to the squad, when there were so many injuries to contend with. He also had them always in the top four, competing there and thereabouts. There was a stage where only Manchester City had more points than Mauricio Pochettino's Spurs. And what then happened? Liverpool went and bought Alisson, Virgil van Dijk. Liverpool skyrocketed. Tottenham didn't refresh. And then, you know, the staleness with Pochettino or under Pochettino eventually told. Now, when you look at the shortlist or some of the candidates being spoken about with Spurs, you'll see they're still stuck in two frame of minds. Do they go for the guaranteed winner again, like they did with Mourinho and Conte? Or do they go for the next up-and-coming manager, like they did when they originally hired Pochettino? Now, they like De Zerbi from Brighton. He's not going anywhere. The club tell us he himself feels that he needs another season at Brighton. So where to next, we shall see.
Can I just make one final quick point as well? Is I think we should retain a sense of perspective, because if you look at the league table, Spurs are actually fourth. They're above Liverpool. They are above Chelsea as well. So I know it's all doom and gloom this morning. There's lots of controversy. Everyone seems to be falling out with each other. But this Spurs side, for all the criticism, for all the slagging off the players are getting, they are in fourth. They are above Liverpool and they are above Chelsea.
Yet
the Chelsea side who's spent
finish
about £500 million,
The manager himself says they'll probably finish 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th. Those are his own words. So if that's what he's believing the end to the season is going to bring, what are the players and the hierarchy supposed to believe?